So they just dropped that new Fast and Furious 10 trailer, and we know it's gotta end soon, right? Right? We're not about to be here till Fast and Furious 20, right? Some news came out that Vin Diesel and director David Twohy of the Riddick series are working on the fourth installment of that film series. And that got me thinking. I used to always catch these random ass Riddick films on TV midway through the film, and Vin Diesel was wearing these weird ass goggles for no damn reason, and nothing made any sense to me. And I don't know, they gotta be good enough to get a fourth movie after all this time, right? I like sci-fi. I like action and adventure films, so why not give it a shot and start watching them? So I started off with the first film in the Riddick series called Pitch Black. And the dope thing about the series is that it starts off as an action horror film instead of the usual action adventure stuff you probably think of when it comes to these films. And I gotta say though, even though the CGI definitely aged, the editing gets kind of wonky sometimes and there's odd timing for the funny moments.
I thought it was Riddick.
This movie's still kind of charming, and it's because of Vin Diesel's performance as Riddick. So here's the plot. We got this little spaceship carrying a whole bunch of people, and it crash lands on this desert planet with 3 suns. You got 11 people that survive, which includes the pilot, the criminal, the bounty hunter, this religious dude, and 2 or 3 of his kids, or disciples, I'm not really sure. These 2 settlers, this rich ass dude, and then this runaway kid named Jack. And so now they're stuck on this planet trying to find a way to survive and escape, but they also have to somehow contend with these flying nocturnal critters that have been coming out of the dark trying to eat them. But they realize that Riddick is their only hope of survival because he can see in the dark, and they gotta find a way to use him and live. Now, watching this movie with little knowledge of anything else in the stories that come after it kind of tells me everything I need to know about why it stuck around, and it's because of the main character. And this movie kind of plays around with who you're supposed to root for in this situation. Do we want Carolyn, the pilot, to survive after she almost killed everyone to save her own ass at the beginning? Do we side with John's the bounty hunter because he's the authority figure and he's the law and he's the guy that captured the dangerous criminal? Or is it actually the criminal himself that we want to survive? And what I like about Pitch Black is that it kind of messes around with the audience to try to get them to wonder who these people really are inside, and I think it does the best with these 3 characters. Now, Johns is not the nicest guy on the ship. Far from it, actually. Now, he might perform the role of the authority, lawful figure, and being a cop who's supposed to bring Riddick to justice, but in actuality, he's really just a liar and a bounty hunter who wants to bring Riddick alive for money. And on top of that, this dude be getting high off the painkillers.
Come on now, dawg.
Like, the further the story goes, the more that it turns out that you just cannot trust this guy. But I'll still give the credit where credit is due. At the beginning of the story, you're made to believe that he's this righteous guy just trying to help everyone out and lead the team to safety. But it turns out he's probably the most crooked out of everybody. So Carolyn, the pilot, is a character you're not really sure how to feel about her at first. Because right in the beginning of the movie, she deadass almost let everyone die to save her own ass. And then she was stuck having to lead those same people to survival. So you kind of don't really want to jive with her. But what's cool about her character, I think, is that she's a strong, independent woman who don't need no man. Nah, I'm playing. She's like a female character who's not afraid to lead, but is also not afraid to show her own vulnerability and insecurity. And I think that's pretty cool about her character. And she has a cool arc in the movie where she realizes that she's made a mistake in trying to sacrifice everyone, and she wants to make things right and actually would be willing to put her life on the line to save the rest of the survivors. And the cool thing with her is that she also doesn't know how much she can trust Riddick, so that kind of has a push and pull dynamic. But ultimately she wants to make things right and she's willing to stand up to Riddick. She really just wants not to be a coward. She sticks to her morals by the end of the film and actually develops into a character that you respect and want to see survive. And then there's our boy.
It should be Riddick. escaped convict, murderer.
He's introduced in this film as a criminal who needs to be kept imprisoned. He's got the ability to see in darkness thanks to surgical implants in his eyes. I mean, let's call it what it is. He's a badass.
Did not know who was fooling with.
Throughout the film, you're told and shown not to trust Riddick, but we're also given plenty of moments where it wants you to question his morals and his motives. Not to mention, he's a smartass, physically capable.
Looks clear.
You said clear.
I said it looks clear.
What's it look like now?
Looks clear.
You kind of want to see his next move. You're not really sure where his morals lie and how cold and heartless he is. Even when you expect him to do one thing, he really ends up doing another because he's only looking out for himself.
You don't know anything about me. I will leave you here.
He's really only moving to the beat of his own drum and no one else's, and that's because he's learned not to trust anyone. This is why the scene between him and Carolyn is so beautiful. As it turns out, he's got respect for people who are going to back up what they say with action, and he's willing to show his empathetic side in exchange. He's got mystery, charm, capability, despite the fact that he's an opportunist, so you kind of want to see him survive at the end. And this is where the character development of both Riddick and Carolyn cross and benefit both characters. In the end, when Carolyn refuses to save herself, she convinces Riddick to come back with her to save the last two survivors, and she ends up dying while saving him at the end. And you can see that that's going to stick with him. Now, in the original script, it was actually Riddick who was supposed to die and Carolyn was supposed to live, but they decided to change it up when the cast realized that Riddick is actually a character you might want to follow in more films. So that's how we ended up getting the ending we got, and I think it works better. Overall, Pitch Black is solid. It's definitely got that nostalgic late 90s, early 2000s vibe, which is good or bad depending on your taste.
You can't leave. I gotta say good night.
And I like the idea of surviving in darkness during an eclipse, which can lead to some cool effects. And having a character who can see in darkness makes for an interesting aspect of the story. There's a clever moment in which when the eclipse happens, everyone's true selves are really shown, in which you kind of see who's actually about that life. We got some good performances as well, and so I can see why people wanted a sequel that eventually came out in 2004 called The Chronicles of Riddick. So maybe I'll do a video on that sometime soon. So if you're looking for a cool little sci-fi action horror film, you can't go wrong with Pitch Black. Give it a shot.